Rivera, we love her. I was in Hawaii for 18 months. Poor me, huh? And Denise was a transitional consultant for Unity of Church of Hawaii in Honolulu, and I just went along for, support for her. Yeah, for the ocean, for the beach walks, and yeah. Anyway, Faith Rivera is that's where she comes from, and I get to see her quite often and get to know her, and she's as lovely a person as she is an artist. So that was another blessing of being there. So what do you guys want to talk about today? I'm open. Even if it goes badly, the risk is minimal, right? Yeah. Well, I did mention last week that I am open to dialogue, conversation, questions. Not that I have all the answers, but I'm certainly willing to entertain a conversation in which wisdom emerges, and I think that's the beauty of spiritual community. Denise and I have been talking a lot lately about the prognosis for spiritual communities because, as is evidence here and in many places throughout the world, the attendance in traditional spiritual communities and mosques, temples, churches is declining. And so there's a question out there: is it outlived its usefulness in this particular form? In other words, is the idea of church and people coming in and listening to a speaker and listening to music, is that model of church or spirituality, is that no longer meeting people at where they really live and where their needs are? And what has sort of come out of, there's been lots of surveys that have been done, there's been lots of studies that have been done, and what seems to emerge as sort of a evidence of what is still valuable about spiritual community, it's not so much the message as you might expect, because today you can get wonderful messages, inspirational messages from so many different places. You can go online and there's, thousands and hundreds of choices. But what remains is this thing called community. It's where people can gather together of like mind and like heart and have a shared experience of spirituality, and that we're maybe moving away from this hierarchy where the message comes through a particular individual with a passive receipt of the message by people who are sitting in seats. And that more and more the younger generation seems to be attracted to dialogue, having conversations and being able to discuss these ideas as opposed to just, listening. And when I was in Santa Barbara, and we kind of developed this theory of whether this might be true for us, and we had some young people in the congregation, and so we started doing a discussion after the service. I still did the service the normal way, but then we gathered in another chapel and just got in a big circle, and then we had this conversation where people could bring thoughts and comments and questions and discuss and share their own insights. And I think that's probably going to be how this community, or how any community really remains viable, is if particularly for younger people, because they're not used to this. Though many of us grew up with this sort of model of ministry, but younger people are so used to being able to interact and through Facebook and social media, that it isn't a one-way situation. It's comments and chat rooms and all these other ways of being able to exchange ideas, lives in the DNA of the millennials and Gen Xers and Gen Y. So what do you think about that? How does that land for you? I mean, most of us in this room are, come from the where we grew up in this kind of environment, but how do you see that as being a viable way of going forward? And if, for no other reason than I think if we don't address that, there will be a continual decline, which is not what we want to be about. Although that's a possibility too, and sometimes things do have to, die off, and something new, comes from that. But if we can catch it, and keep it viable and alive, I think that would be important. So we got a microphone if anyone has a thought. Has a thought. Get my water here.
I would agree that community is very important to why I come to this church. I love the messages, but community is so important. And one of the things I experience from community is also what I'm experiencing where I live, that we recently had a lockdown for COVID for 3 weeks, and when I came back, 2 people had died, one of whom was someone that I sat at the same table with and talked to quite frequently, and another one I didn't know as well, and then go back to church and find out that Robin's husband has died. But in each case, although they are physically gone, they're still in my mind. But I wouldn't have learned that if I were just zooming in. I wouldn't have that experience of still having in my mind, in many ways still they're alive to me. And so I agree, it's a mix. It's wonderful to have Zoom, but I still think community is so important.
And when you say that, you mean the physical community coming together and being in the same space, the same physical space.
Only because in Zoom, you don't have the opportunity to chat amongst yourself. Well, you do, but people don't. Chat amongst yourself. On a Zoom thing, unless I was getting certain emails, I wouldn't have known about Robin's husband.
Yes.
You wouldn't have known about what was happening at Park Villa. So, yeah.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Charles. Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I observe too, and I want to hear more from you, and maybe this will spark something also, is that when you're going through a tough time in your life, going through it by yourself is obviously challenging. Maybe you don't have a partner. If you're going through it by yourself, that's very difficult. What makes it a lot easier is if you are in relationship with somebody who's already gone through that, whether that's cancer or bankruptcy or loss of a job or whatever the human challenge might be. If you're in the space of someone who has already gone through it, has gotten to the other side of that, they carry this knowing that there is life after divorce, there's life after cancer, there's life after bankruptcy. And that knowing is a form of spiritual support, even if it's not spoken, even if it isn't shared. There's because we know at the heart of all of us, we are energy, and what we know, what we hold, has an energetic output. And many people say that, when they come into a room of people, when they're, especially people who have been through life, most of us have had challenges, we carry a knowing of this ongoing nature of life, even despite the challenges. So, that was something that I was, in fact, I don't know if I shared this with you. I haven't been with you that long that I haven't shared all my stories, but this is one of my favorite ones. I was a very young minister. It was my first class that I gave, and I was, nervous and feeling, very vulnerable. And this woman, after I'd spoken a while on unity principles, whatever I was talking about, she raised her hand and she said, I have gone through such terrible abuse as a child, and how I'm trying to understand, how do I deal with this, with spirituality, with my faith, and still suffering the trauma of that. And I was flummoxed. I did not know what to say at that particular moment. And there was a woman sitting behind her. And as we sat in this silence for a moment, this woman behind her put her hand on her shoulder and she said, I've been through this journey. I would be glad to talk with you. I mean, this is what you call grace. This is what you call the value of a community where someone, who has been through something very difficult can be that presence of faith, having gotten through and on the other side of something very difficult. So, that would be an example of how spiritual community still, would never become obsolete or outmoded, because that situation obviously will continue to, visit in every one of our lives. What else? Any other thoughts, Eva?
Well, I do agree absolutely that our community is what keeps us together, and I think that's what young people are looking for too: authenticity,
Yeah.
truth, a place where they can be themselves and be fully accepted.
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, I had the honor of going to the Parliament of World Religions, and there were lots of young people there. They're seeking as well.
Yes.
And I think that when that energy, that spirit, that love can come through, they're not interested in organization.
Right.
They don't want to be told, or at least the ones around my daughter's age, that she's very spiritual, but she does not want to go into any church, any organized thing that looks organized. They're more drawn to nature and how they can relate to nature as a guidance for themselves. So the more that we can just do unconditional love and accept whatever place they are at. And I do agree totally that having someone who has gone through different stages of life, very important. All of you are very important to me, and I know it's been difficult times in my life that I hadn't expected, but I know that I can always rely on my community to support me through those times, and hopefully I can do the same for them as well.
Yes.
So that's
beautiful. Yeah.
That's the value of having a spiritual community. And it may look different. We may have to be online more, and then once that contact is made, be able to go and give that hug. I put that prayer that I did last week online, and a neighbor of mine is going through a difficult time, so I sent her that link. She's not necessarily religious, but what she said back to me was, God, this was as good as getting a hug from you. And so
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so I will continue to do that. And then when the time arrives to be physically present, do that too.
That's quite profound, actually. This is as good as getting a hug from you, because it's almost like we're learning to I'm trying to find the right word here, but to take something which would be modern technology and actually open our heart to that, to receiving the message in that form, whereas, before it had to be tactile, it had to be, a kinesthetic experience that we can, because, spirit is energy anyway, it doesn't have form. So we can begin to embrace the forms of this time that can transmute the message. It's a great evolution of consciousness taking form. We can't hear you as well either, so, yeah.
I talk loud.
Oh.
Anyway, I just thank God every night. I pray every night for a half an hour, and I thank God that things happened the way they did to me, which was bad. I mean, there were some bad things that happened. My husband left me when my youngest daughter was 5, lost my home. I couldn't get a job because I was raised in Forks area, and there was no jobs, and so I kind of worked at the bowling alley for a little while, but I didn't have any money. And both of my all kids were all graduated from high school. So anyway, the welfare talked me into moving from Forks to Port Angeles so I could go to college. And so I thought, well, I don't like living on welfare, so I thought, well, I'm going to do that. So my daughter and I moved to Port Angeles in 1971, and I went to college and ended up, I thank God, I thank my mother-in-law for saying, Ruth, we need a singer down at Unity. And I said, what's Unity? I said, I went to Congregational Church in Forks, but I said, I didn't know God. I did not know God when I was going to Congregational Church. So I got there and I went down and turned out, and I sang for our minister, John Adams. You're hired. And I said, no, I won't take any money. So that's when I started in with Unity, and I found God, and everything turned out wonderful for me because I was in such a bad mood, losing all of what I did.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't long until I just found out that everything was with me. God was there with me all the time, and I was happy. I was happy all the time. It didn't make any difference what happened or anything like that. I was happy. So I knew God was right there with me.
That's the heart of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's been with me for all this time, because there was 3 times in my life I could have died, and I knew I was here for a reason. God put me on earth for something.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're still contributing to the good people around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, God.
Thank you, God. Hi.
I just wanted to speak.
Say your name first, would you?
I'm Katie.
Katie, good to
Yes.
meet you.
You too. Your original question, I think that your instincts are spot on. A lot of my friends, there's been a huge uptick in podcasts, and
Yes.
we're really enjoying being able to go to one place and hear a lot of different perspectives on the same topic. And then a lot of those people who have these podcasts then go online to Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is, and they offer Q&A sessions where people who listen to the podcast can then go there and have a discussion.
Yes.
And I think that what's happening is we're in this age of awakening, and I really think that we're coming into our own, and there's a lot of empowering going on, and people are realizing that we all have the same source energy within us. So whereas in traditional church, people were coming to one person and looking for guidance,
Right.
a lot of the people now are coming up and knowing their own and looking within to find their guidance. And I appreciate so much that you realize that, and you're turning it around into your congregation to hear what we all have to say, because we're all processing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a wonderful confirmation of, from someone who, yes, you're in that age demographic that, that's what's missing from many churches today, as it is in this community. So if we're going to, be a place for everybody, then we have to conform in a way that continues to, stay true to the teachings. We don't have to leave to change the palette of what we share and express, but we can change the format in which that gets heard and gets shared, and so that there is a give and a take, a receiving and a sharing. And so that experiment that I ran in Unity of Santa Barbara, it went for a while, But the problem was we had such a disproportion of young people to older generation that we needed more. We needed more activities that would draw young people into the church. We did have a good youth program, so that was one thing we had, and we had great music. It was very upbeat. So those are the things that, obviously draw, we tend to look around when we go into a new place, and we look for people that look like us, not physically, but at least demographically in terms of age and so forth, because our shared life experience is part of how we connect with people over our life experiences. So having other people who are in our station in life, it's easier for us to have conversations. So yeah, I think a youth program, dynamic music, and opportunity for people to share would probably be the prescription for viability of this model of ministry. Or it's going to die out, and that, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, there's a grief process around that, but sometimes that which is obsolete has to die. I mean, we would consider this evolution. We're looking at it biologically. That which no longer really serves dies out, but out of that, a more adaptable species or form then rises up. Yeah, because as you said, all of us have this impulse for a spiritual unfoldment. I mean, it's not in it's just not in some people or in one religion. Obviously, it's every one of us. We're all spiritual beings primarily, and that impulse, whenever it arises for us, is going to take us in a particular direction according to our sensibilities and what we need to go with that. It's kind of like, well, we all need protein, and some people are vegetarian and some people are meat eaters, and but the protein need is there, and the need for spirituality is universal. So that's not dying. That actually may be becoming more intensified, because we are really evolving in consciousness, and we're learning more and more that who and what we are is our spiritual beings, and how that contrasts with the world that is so fixated on form and control and predicting and power tripping and ego-based thinking, is making it more imperative that we bring this spirituality out into expression and into our lives and into our schools and into our politics and into every area of our life. So that is alive and well. It's only how will we gather, how will we come together in order to make real this impulse to express the spirituality in a way that meets the sensibilities of where we are in our human life. So I think that's a really good question, and it's a hot topic across the land. Everyone is asking this question. So
I just think about my own journey, being out of faith activities through most of my midlife, and then finally finding unity and the beauty of the community and the people and the opportunity to interact was what drew me. And when we went into Zoom and having to do everything online, it just wasn't there for me. But I'm not of the generation that is used to communicating online. I have friends that they'll only text me. I can barely get them to call me. And, but it's so important. I found that it's so important to get up and get out to meet people. And what scares me about so many that are looking for it all online, and yeah, there's good community and there's good interaction, you're still not, even if it's a bow or a hug, you still don't get that personal connection. Yeah, like I said, it's so generational, the way that people who have been raised with Instagram, and that's how they communicate everything. I'm here, I'm doing this, and I'm not like that. And I hope that more and more people can get out of their houses, Because the danger is the isolation. Even though I was with my community, I Zoomed and had all these things, I still was at home. And I was like, I want to get out. I want to get to see people. I want to smile at them. And I don't know how to spark that in people that are really used to just interacting mostly online. That's my enigma.
Right. Well, I think the need, what's that? Necessity is the mother of invention. I think if you have that need, like you do, you found your solution. And I think everybody has to kind of do that authentically, so that I don't know that there's one size fits all, that, we can't decide for others what's best for them. I mean, we probably learned that the hard way in our relationships. But the point being, though, is really honoring, the impulse that you have, and then following that according to the sensibilities that match what form makes you feel most genuine and authentic in that part of your life. So, and I think that's what young people and everybody is doing. They're following that impulse. And I think we, those of us who are, spiritual leaders, need to be listening more than talking, perhaps, in that particular area. Because, as you said, we're not used to that being what we grew up with. Whereas people who are, 40 or under, grew up with technology from a very early age. And to them, they're in their comfort zone. They're not stretching in order to navigate that technology, and to them that actually supports them in feeling more genuine and comfortable. Whereas for us, maybe it feels like a form that's not comfortable for us. But as long as we don't get caught up in the form, having it to be one form for everybody, I think that we'll have, doors will be open for people to have the experience that meets them. And not every spiritual community has to meet the demographics of, a whole range of ages and sensibilities. That would be, trying to please all the people all the time, which is, a prescription for failure. But we can certainly vary, how we do spirituality and how we do church, so that there's an opportunity for people who are not used to this particular model to find something within the offerings or the programs of this community that would address that. And I think if we do that and we let them tell us, like do focus groups or ways where you really get that kind of information, and allow people to sort of self-select. It's kind of like when you go to a buffet, I want this, but I don't want that. I mean, people will tell us what they will resonate with. But if we're not asking the question, if we're not open to change, then we will find ourselves, living out this model in ever declining numbers, which would be sad, because there's an opportunity to do it differently, I think. Donna.
I wanted to share the church that I was minister right before I came to the Northwest here 6 years ago. Is in Oregon on the coast. It was in Newport, and they closed during the pandemic, and have been closed up until this month. And this month they moved into a new facility in Walport, a different town, and they are having guest speakers. And at the end of every service, they have about a 15-minute period of discussion. That speaker is available to answer questions, or whatever you want to do with that time.
Yes.
Yeah, but it is I said, our fellowship area out here with a cup of coffee would be just perfect for that. So I think it's important for us to look around and see what other small churches are doing, because some of them are being very creative. And some of them are not using the speaker as the centerpiece of the service, but maybe music. So finding a musician that would come in and be the heart of it, and then having guest speakers. Lots of different ways to do it, And I wanted to say something about your story. It's very important that we have those people who are willing to reach out and touch somebody on the shoulder and say, I've been through this and I'm available to talk with you if you want that, if you need that. But it's also important to have the people who are willing to speak up and say, this is my pain, and I need help. And is there somebody here who can help me?
Yes.
You
Yes.
need both sides. You need both sides of that.
And I think that's so true. And I think that part of that is creating a safe space,
Yes.
where people can share. In other words, confidentiality and respect, and and sometimes you can set that up in small groups where you can have sharing guidelines so that people know that, yeah, and you can begin to create the container in which people feel safe to share, so that they can presence their pain, what they're going through, and in a way that's healthy. In other words, we all go through life. We all go through the human condition, and no one is immune from it. Our way shower Jesus, certainly had his pain and his difficulty, and but presencing that in an environment where other people can offer their own sort of spiritual experience is really what gives people hope. You can give people platitudes all day long, and you can say, I'll pray with you, and that's all good. But if someone says, I've been through cancer, I've been through that, I've been through a divorce, I've been through a bankruptcy, that speaks power. And it's the word through. I've been through that. Yeah. And if you're in the midst of it and somebody else has gone through it, there's great inspiration that can come from, that partnership. One person sharing where they are in the moment, and the other person that said, yes, I've been through that, I've gotten through that. And what got me through that was a deep knowing of, this or that, and also the human ways. I had to be courageous, and you can be courageous, and we're here for you. I mean, that if anything else, what I've seen in my 27 years of ministry is that people being there for each other was the greatest ministry that ever happened that I witnessed. It wasn't the talks that I gave or the counseling that I gave. It was the people who knew the truth for themselves, had gone through something that was very difficult, shared it with another person, and that became powerful beyond words. And that's still, the potential for that still exists in a community. Yes. Exactly. And then there's someone else.
I was going to go. I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, right. She's in the flow. Yeah. And I think the other thing is taking off what you just said about, you've gone through all these difficulties. I was, when I was a young minister, I was shocked when people would say, I thank God for my cancer. I thank God for going through this, this divorce that I went through. And I just thought this was, unity speak, you know, that this was this Pollyannish, you know, everything is good kind of whitewashing of the pain, until I, you know, delve deeper into people's experiences. And oftentimes when we go through something really difficult like that, if we've identified ourselves with a relationship, a husband or a wife or whatever, or with a job, and then those things go away, we are asked to ask the proverbial existential question, who am I? And that's an invitation for spirit to reveal something much deeper than how you have been identifying, excuse me, you've been identifying yourself with that situation or that person. That's not who you really are. And so those great losses can actually be spiritual opportunities. They can be, you know, one thing goes away, but it reveals something much more true about you, and that is a spiritual resurrection. So those crucifixions can lead to resurrections, and that also can happen in the context of people sharing their experience. I can say, I grew more spiritually going through cancer than I ever did going to church every Sunday, you know, where life was going la 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 and everything was good. So yeah, thank you for that and reminding me of that as well.
That's very, very true. Just a little insight from my older brother, who, when he was recovering from alcoholism, part of what he had to do was ask our dad his story, you know, and we don't tell our kids our story, good or bad, and we don't share those things with them, and it's things that they need to know in order to go forward with some parts of their life. And so he was able to understand why our dad was the way he was, and his grandfather was the way he was, and,
Yes.
and it went on back. And it's what the Native Americans do with their children. They had kind of almost lost that, and they're starting to recover to tell their kids stories of their families and their ancestors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if we understand the why and the wherefore behind something that was very difficult, it's much easier for us to be with it and to understand. Yeah.
And for me, it's also asking myself these days, what am I supposed to learn from this? What is mine to learn from this situation?
Right.
And sometimes I have to ask it over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Good. Well, are we good for today? We can continue this. Okay, Eva, please.
Just a comment about a need for a place for the significant events of our lives. The welcome to the world, the weddings, the funerals, that we still all need a place to come together during those highly emotional, significant times. We just experienced a family wedding over Zoom last week, and it was not very satisfying.
Yeah,
I understood the circumstances, and we would have had to
Right.
travel across the country. No cake, that was it.
Or champagne.
But I think that there will always be a place, if we hold the space and make it sacred with our energy and our love and our prayers, that people will be drawn to having the significant events of their lives in a place that they can really experience either a beginning or an end or a resolution in their lives that is unique. So I think that there's still a place for that. And I've seen many couples searching around. Of course, we have lots of beautiful places here in our area for nature weddings and other kinds of events, but to truly appreciate community at those times, I think holding a sacred space for others is very important. And the second thing was I have volunteered at Crisis Lines, and it just blew me away just because of the circumstances we've gone through with COVID. So many more people are experiencing crises in their mental health. Our government just set up a 988 line like a 911, but it's 988 for suicide prevention. And they're saying there's not enough counselors in the country to satisfy what they expect and what's happening with that. So there's still a place for us to hold the transformation of the pain that people are going through.
That's
And
right.
we can be the catalysts for that in our gatherings and in our prayers. Part of what we offer here is the prayer. That can be together, or it can be as prayer chaplains or as individuals. So there's many, many levels to our spirituality and how we contribute to the world.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. I'll just end with one quick story that just came to me. My last Sunday at Unity of Santa Barbara, and at that point I thought this is probably going to be my last Sunday in a church at all. I was going to retire forever and ever. But they say never say never. But anyway, that was how I was feeling at the time. And it took forever for everyone to, to sort of come through the line. It must have been at least an hour before everyone to the last person. And the last person who came through the line was this young woman, probably mid-20s, maybe a little older. And she said, "I don't know if you even know who I am." She said, "But I came one Sunday with my daughter, and the daughter was maybe 1 or 2, very young, and the daughter was crying, and they were sitting in the back of the sanctuary, and one of the ushers, who was not aware of all of our facility, said to this woman and child, 'I'm sorry, but your child is crying. You need to leave. You're disrupting the service.'" So this woman got up and she left with her child. And apparently our youth director at the time knew this person and found out about this incident. Because apparently she had been there before. I'd never met her. And so she told me about it. And I said, "Give me your phone number. I want to call her up." So I called her up and I said, "I'm so sorry this happened. That usher didn't know that we have another chapel in the back, and you could have gone back there, and there's a TV screen. You could have watched the service, and we really messed up. So, I hope you'll give us another chance and come back. We would love to have you come back." And she said, "Well, thank you for your call." And I wasn't assured that she was going to come back. She was obviously, deeply offended and hurt and not felt very welcome. So anyway, so this woman comes up to me at my last Sunday, and she said, "I'm so grateful that you called me." She said, "I was going through such a difficult time in my life. I was homeless." And she said, "So I've been coming, I'm either coming here or I'm watching you online, and I've learned so much, about spirituality and about how to, embrace my life and embrace these teachings." And she says, "I've developed a foundation for young women who have children, without partners." And she said, "I'm helping so many people." She said, "Had you not called me, I would not have kept coming back, and I would not have developed, this capacity to exceed my difficulty, to get beyond my troubles and my difficulties." And I started crying. I was always pretty much an emotional wreck at that point anyway, but that was it. But it just speaks so powerfully of how do we treat people that come through these doors. Do we make them feel welcome? And I have no doubt that you all would do that. But to know that it could be life-changing to that level, even with all my years of experience, I had never heard anything so beautiful and so profound. And it means, like, even if you screw up, you can have a do-over and you can make it better. So anyway, I think that's enough for our time today. I'll be with you 2 weeks from today. Reverend Donna will be here next week. And last Sunday, I don't know what we'll talk about, but I'm sure it'll be good. We'll enjoy it. Should we do a little meditation, a little prayer? Okay, let's do that. Okay, so let's just all take a breath together. And we just let it out. And again. So we are right now in the presence of pure being. Below the surface mind, there is a oneness that connects us together. In our essence, we are love itself. And love leaves nobody out. Love is the glue that binds us heart to heart. And we know God is love. And we know that this love is the tapestry that unites us in a common purpose. It is our highest and deepest truth, and can be our most powerful ally in this human life. That which heals, that which allows us to forgive, that which connects us even to that which is different from us. It dissolves the barriers and the boundaries and the feelings of separation. Just like a wave that appears to be unique and separate, but as it resolves, it returns into the vastness of the ocean. We know this love that we are is what brings us into a sense of connection with all of life and each other. And we're grateful that this love is something that we had no part in, but we have it fully available and accessible without condition. And we thank you, Mother, Father, God, for this love that created us after its image and likeness. And that it is boundless and allows us to expand our sense of who we are beyond form, beyond body, beyond minds, to this energy of love that is everywhere in its fullness, at every moment, in every place in space. And as we go forward from this moment, may our thoughts and our feelings and our intentions be bathed in such love that we cannot help but grow it wherever we go. That we would bring heaven to earth be our deepest prayer and our greatest purpose here. Thank you for the grace of your love that is us. So be it.